Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. A disability support worker says she's at her breaking point after working 35 hours straight. Her story highlighting the staffing crisis at Community Living Essex County, plus a potential plan to help restore Hillman Marsh as it continues to be flooded by Lake Erie. The Leamington Shoreline Association weighs in, and the Juno nominee list was released today. We introduce you to the local artists who made the cut. Support staff at Community Living Essex County say long work hours are pushing them out of the sector. This while the organization says it's having a hard time hiring. As the CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa explains, it has some at what they're calling their breaking point.
Imagine working a 35-hour shift with no prior notice. That's what Amanda Hodgkins says happened to her. She works at Community Living Essex County, so she supports people with a range of disabilities. In June 2022, Hodgkins says she worked nearly 2 days worth of shifts because of a staffing shortage.
At first, it wasn't a big shock being stuck for the second shift, just because it has happened previously. The third shift, I was stuck overnight, so obviously I didn't have blankets and pillows. Fourth shift that I was stuck on, it was almost like bargaining. I kept telling myself, okay, well, I'll be going home the next shift, and it never occurred.
Community Living Essex County told CBC News that what happened is not acceptable. At the time, they say that several of their homes had been in COVID-19 outbreaks, so some staff were off sick.
We don't want that to happen. We feel horrible that it did happen to that employee. We don't find it's safe or it's good for anybody.
Since the pandemic, Bolger says that the organization has had challenges hiring staff. Community living organizations across Ontario have been asking the government for a 5% base funding increase. The Essex County location says that it hasn't had an increase since 2008, and that the extra dollars would help with their growing operational costs. It would then allow them to have extra money, they say, to put towards wages and attracting more staff. QP Local 3137 is currently in bargaining with Community Living Essex County. They say that better wages and making sure staff aren't working long hours are two key issues that they want addressed.
Our collective agreement currently gives you overtime after 14 consecutive hours. But if you're stuck, you might not make it home to your daycare and you'll pay a late fee, or you have elder care or other responsibilities you might have.
Workers at the organization have been without a contract for nearly a year. The union hopes it can secure one by the end of this month. Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Windsor.
One person is dead after two crashes in the same area in Amherstburg this morning. Windsor police say they're investigating both collisions that happened just after 7 a.m. at County Road 20 and County Road 9. A pickup truck trying to turn left collided with an SUV. Police say the driver of that SUV was taken to hospital with serious injuries where they later died. Shortly after that crash, another vehicle slammed into the back of the pickup truck involved in the initial incident. Police say that driver told them they didn't see the crash. No other injuries have been reported. Several large pigs are dead after a transport truck hauling livestock in the Tecumseh area caught fire. Tecumseh OPP and fire crews were on scene this morning at around 8 a.m. at North Talbot Road near Concession Road 8. The driver of the truck was not hurt. Police could not say how many pigs died. OPP say investigators believe the fire had a mechanical cause. Police are treating the incident as non-suspicious. The municipality of Chatham-Kent is purchasing a handful of properties in the Wheatley evacuation zone. This comes 3 years after the gas explosion that injured 20 people and destroyed parts of the community. The municipality says the properties on Erie Street North where the explosion took place will be purchased. That's because they were deemed unsuitable for redevelopment based on engineering reports. The cost will be funded by a $3 million provincial grant, and the rest will be drawn from a reserve fund. Staff say negotiations continue for the potential purchase of the remaining properties within the evacuation zone. Following the explosion in 2021, 2 buildings collapsed, displacing more than 100 people and businesses. Plans are being considered to build a sort of barrier at Hillman Marsh in Leamington. The Essex Region Conservation Authority says this would help restore the wetland as the area has been overrun with water from Lake Erie. The barrier would also help protect more than 7,000 acres of farmland from potential flooding. The plan would cost more than $10 million to install, needing money from upper levels of government. We spoke with a resident who's been pushing for action for years.
According to the preliminary plans, this new barrier beach will start somewhere in this area and arch out and join up with another barricade over in that about a mile from here. And it'll be, like I say, there's 3 proposals. I think everyone in the committee leans towards a permanent barrier beach that will not allow any overtopping.
What is the ultimate goal of doing this work? What does it accomplish?
Well, okay, so it protects the Hillman Marsh from Lake Erie. And now it can be restored to a proper wetland, where it performs as a wetland, where it filters out the nutrients and the pollutants before entering Lake Erie. That doesn't happen today. If the barrier beach is not restored, it's not if, but when that berm over there on Road 1 is breached, and that 7,500 acres would be underwater, and something like 500 homes. The roads would be impassable, covered by 3, 4, 5 feet of water. It's been quite frustrating. There's been a number of studies over the years that went nowhere. And this is the first time that I'm actually seeing some action, and it really makes me happy.
Healthcare workers from across the province gathered on the streets of downtown Toronto this afternoon to rally against the province. Several of the unions that represent healthcare workers are actively engaged in collective bargaining. They're demanding higher wages and better working conditions. Greg Ross brings us the story.
I'm gonna put one foot in front of the other.
They sang rally songs and chanted together in unison against the provincial government.
Patients, not profit.
Hundreds of healthcare workers from across the province gathered on Queen Street West outside the Sheraton Hotel.
Solidarity forever.
That's where representatives from the province were at the bargaining table with CUPE, one of the unions that represents healthcare workers.
The quality of patient care is suffering tremendously.
Michael Hurley is the president of the CUPE Hospitals Council. He says a lack of funding from the province has created poor working conditions.
The negotiations here are just a sideshow to the real problem in Ontario hospitals, which is the crisis, that's affecting so many emergency rooms at, hallway medicine and all those people, 1,350 on stretchers, the 107,000 waiting for surgeries.
CUPE receiving support from 4 other unions that represent healthcare workers.
Many of these protesters traveled for hours this morning by bus from all over the province to be a part of this rally.
Hi, I came from Ottawa today.
This man traveled with several of his colleagues by bus in hopes of getting their message across to the province.
Well, I hope they see unity. I hope they see that we can stand together.
Keep a moving on.
They say a lack of funding and resources is taking a toll on Ontario healthcare.
We lose over 10% of nurses and other staff every year, and we're not replacing them.
I've seen within the last 2 years, they just say, I'm out, I'm retiring, I just can't do this anymore because the working conditions are so poor.
But Premier Doug Ford had a very different message at a press conference today with the health minister to announce a new patient and surgical tower at Toronto Western Hospital.
Since 2018, we've added more than 80,000 nurses that have registered here in Ontario. We've also added well over 10,000 new doctors since 2018. And with those doctors, we're building new medical universities.
The union will give it all they've got, but at the end of the
Opposition leaders say they're not doing enough.
The provincial government has been sitting on billions of dollars, waiting for a so-called rainy day, not spending the money that they've actually allocated for healthcare. We need them to spend that money. We need them to invest.
Our fight is your fight.
The unions that represent healthcare workers in the province are demanding a 5% funding increase beyond inflation. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
The federal government is now inviting people to sign up for Canada's new national dental plan, but there's questions about eligibility. People who already have private insurance do not qualify and cannot apply. CBC News has heard from seniors who are wondering about their eligibility if they drop their private plan. They point out private insurance premiums can be a financial burden, especially for seniors. The federal health minister's office has yet to clarify. The federal government is putting nearly $200 million additional dollars into programs that help shelters and low-income renters.
Today, I'm announcing a $99 million top-up to the Canada Housing Benefit. This benefit helps make rent affordable by delivering rent support payments directly to Canadians.
The finance minister also announced another $100 million for programs to help shelters create more spaces for homeless people. The funding is going to 85 communities across the country to help them deliver temporary rental assistance and meals. On Sunday, Ottawa announced it is extending the ban on home sales to foreign nationals and companies until 2027. The nominations are out for this year's Juno Awards. They were announced at the CBC Broadcast Centre in Toronto.
The final nominees for this year's Juno Awards.
Montreal singer Charlotte Cardin leads the way with 6 nominations. Toronto's Daniel Caesar has 5. Both are nominated for Best Artist, Best Album, and Best Single. And while newer performers dominated, veteran acts are also on the list. That includes Nickelback, the Arkells, and Shania Twain. The Juno Awards show is March 24th. The list of Juno nominees also includes 2 artists and one rock group with local connections. CBC's Dale Molnar spoke with them earlier today.
Russ Macklem and 4 friends from New York, Toronto, and Detroit put together the South Detroit Connection album in just 3 weeks and only rehearsed 3 times before recording it at the Fog Lounge in Windsor. It has been nominated for Jazz Album of the Year Solo. This is the first Juno nomination for Macklem, and even more remarkably, his first album in his 25-year career. He was surprised by the nomination.
It's nice to shed a little light on, the kind of cross-border relationship that we have with Detroit musicians in Windsor. It's a unique relationship that's, been going on for a century at least.
This is the 3rd nomination for Windsorites Tarek Jafar and Justin Tessier. The duo goes by the name The Bluestones. They're nominated for Rock Album of the Year for Pretty Monster. They're both from Windsor but are based in Hamilton now. Jafar wasn't expecting this nomination.
And I'm not even fibbing when I say I had zero idea this was even going to happen. I got a message, maybe half an hour ago. I think one of our managers just said congrats, and I was like, for what? And he's like, well, you've been nominated for Rock Album of the Year in that category. And both Justin and I were confused because we had no idea we'd even been submitted. So yeah, it's pretty exciting, I guess.
This is the 2nd nomination for gospel artist Brooke Nichols from Chatham. Her Glory to God album is nominated for Contemporary Christian Gospel Album of the Year. But even though this is her 2nd nomination, it will be her first trip to the Junos. The first was canceled by the pandemic in 2020.
I feel really grateful, to be honest. Just really, really, usually I have a lot of words to say, and I just feel so grateful.
All the artists are hoping their first trip to the Junos in Halifax on March 24th will also end up being their first wins. You can catch the Junos here on CBC. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
What a beautiful day. Nice warmer temperatures with lots of sun, some of which you can still see poking out on the tower camera there. We have your full weather forecast coming up after the break. Ottawa says help is on its way to Nova Scotia. A historic winter storm buried parts of the province under as much as 150 centimeters of snow. The massive storm has hit several provinces across Atlantic Canada. Roads, schools, offices, and many businesses are closed. CBC's Heather Gillis reports.
In Sydney, Nova Scotia, the hardest hit area, Myrna Murphy is buried deep. She estimates there's snow nearly 2 meters high in her driveway. The dig out isn't close to finished.
Now the problem is it's heavy and it's becoming solid. I have no idea of how we'll get rid of this. I think it's the worst we've ever had. I remember growing up, we'd have this over the course of a winter, but not in one storm.
The federal government is answering Nova Scotia's request for help, sending Parks Canada snow clearing equipment and personnel, and Coast Guard choppers for critical supplies and the evacuation of people isolated and at risk. Help is coming from neighboring New Brunswick and PEI, too. Roads in the region still clogged with snow, but now partially passable thanks to snowplows and heavy equipment like here in Charlottetown. They're working around the clock to clean up, according to the mayor.
And the priority is for emergency services, police, fire, ambulances, to get to any spot they have to in case of emergencies.
Speaking of emergency responders on PEI, well, they've been busy too.
They've answered between 200 and 300 calls from the public, and the vast majority of these are all in concerning vehicles getting stuck and people trying to navigate through this weather.
Plow operator Tyler McQuarrie says he's ready for a rest.
It's been hard, long hours and a lot of snow coming down and over 64 centimeters, I was told.
While for this boy, with school closed for 2 days now, it's playtime here on this mountain in his front yard.
It's a bit scary. It's very high.
This system hasn't spared Newfoundland and Labrador either, dumping 43 centimeters on Wreck House on Newfoundland's west coast since this weekend. Now, this weather started as rain in St. John's this morning and transitioned over to snow, closing down government offices, schools, and some daycares. Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
Our forecast looking much different than the East Coast there. We had an absolutely beautiful February day. Victor Paulo is here to tell us if we have any more of that on the way.
Another beautiful sunny day in Windsor today. Not bad for a Tuesday. Now, taking a look at the reason why, well, we're under a high pressure system right now, and that high pressure system is allowing us to have a lot of that beautiful sunlight as we do experience today. And it's also a reason why we get a lot of those cold nights like we will be experiencing overnight tonight. Now, that same high pressure system, we're bringing us a beautiful sunny Wednesday, but there is some rain on the way by the time we get closer to your Thursday and Friday. But taking a look at average temperatures this time of year, minus 0.5 is your average high and minus 7.9 is your average low. And taking a look at what we're expecting by the time we're taking a long range look at the weather here, well, this is why your Friday and Saturday is going to be quite warm. A lot of that Arctic air mass has worked its way up north. But as we get closer to next week, you'll also notice that that Arctic air mass is working its way back down to where we're located, and you'll be seeing much colder temperatures closer we get to the middle of next week. But here's what we're expecting when it comes to tonight. Tonight's going to be minus 3, feeling like minus 7. And if you do take a big peek of what we're expecting from the top as we're talking about, well, this is that high pressure system as you can see here, which is the reason why, again, like I mentioned, we're able to have no real cloud cover, which is bringing us a lot of beautiful sunshine. And as well, when it comes to the overnight, not a lot of cloud cover means there's no real insulation for that heat, which is why we find a lot of cooler nights like we're expecting. But speaking of what we're expecting when it comes to tomorrow morning, and my little Emmy and your little ones are getting ready, it's going to be a mix of sun and cloud with some cloudy breaks. Minus 1 feeling like minus 3. And a quick look at our 3 and 7 day forecast. Well, got some sunny days ahead. It's going to be beautiful Wednesday. A lot of sunshine will be in store. Thursday, that cloud cover comes in towards your overnight. And that overnight cloud cover is going to lead into some rain and to start off your day for Friday. But it should be all said and done because by the time you take a bit of a peek into your Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, well, we can see it's going to be return of that sun and cloud. But as we talked about, you can see the temperatures start to dip the closer we get to the middle of next week. But let's not worry about those cold temperatures. How about we enjoy that sunny day we have ahead of us tomorrow? Over to you.
Thanks so much for that, Victor. Valentine's Day is a day meant for love. For some, though, it could be a day of reprisals, and a shelter in New Jersey is helping with that. That's coming up. The U.S. National Transportation Safety Board has issued its preliminary report on a frightening incident involving that Alaska Airlines flight last month. A so-called door plug blew out of the Boeing 737 MAX 9 jet shortly after takeoff. The plane was about 5,000 meters up and was able to make a safe emergency landing. The safety report says at least 3 bolts meant to hold the door plug in place were missing. Without the bolts, the plug was able to move and break free from the aircraft. U.S. aviation officials are auditing manufacturing processes at Boeing and one of its key suppliers. Europe is fighting the measles. Cases have exploded over the last year. And as the spread of COVID-19 has shown us, distance is no longer an issue for viruses. The CBC's Lauren Pelly looks at the concerns here.
Across the pond, a virus few people think about anymore has made a grim return. New data show there were more than 40,000 measles cases across Europe in 2023, a 40-fold increase from just 1 year before.
Measles is probably the most infectious human virus that is known. In fact, everybody.
This World Health Organization official says it could spread again in Canada just as easily.
And what's happened is, over the course of the pandemic, we've had a historic backsliding in the immunization rates around the world.
20 children died from measles or complications from measles.
Measles was once a common childhood illness capable of causing pneumonia, brain damage, or blindness. It also kills up to 3 out of every 1,000 children infected. Canada did wipe out the disease decades ago through widespread vaccination programs. Now, most new infections are acquired outside the country.
Globalization and travel means that, another country's problem can become our problem within literally hours.
One recent case of the highly contagious infection in Windsor, Ontario, was linked to possible exposures at multiple locations, including Pearson International Airport.
If somebody with measles goes into a store, leaves, and you go in 90 minutes later, if you are not vaccinated against measles, you can get measles.
Canada's target for measles vaccine coverage is 95%, but the latest data show the percentage of vaccinated kids 7 and under has been dropping, from 87% in 2017 to 83% in 2019 to just 79% by 2021. Doctors say the best way to keep measles from roaring back in Canada is to get more people up to date on the vaccine. Otherwise, the fear is it's not a matter of if this virus will spark more outbreaks, but when. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
With Valentine's Day around the corner, people's thoughts are turning to romance, and perhaps to romance gone wrong. If you're haunted by an ex, you may want to look into a promotional program launched by a pet adoption center in New Jersey. For a $50 donation, the center will name a feral cat after your former flame, and the animal will then get spayed or neutered. The program, which is meant to combat feral cat overpopulation in the area, has made an impact with many Jeffs, Mikes, Ians, and Tylers roaming the area. There's even one cat named Gaslight Guy. But if you're hoping to fully humiliate your ex, there's some disappointing news. The center will not give the cats surnames. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.